Branding was the most important part of my company. As long as people knew the brand, saw the brand, trusted the brand would always sell itself. And that's what I did.
On your off day, your store ran better when you're not here than when you are. And that's when I really realized that if you're going to lead an organization, it's a completely different thing than managing an organization. You have to lead out in front.
After making all that money and then losing it all, one thing I did know was I knew how to do it. I just didn't know how to do it right. When I look at success, most people measure success off of stuff and money. I look at success as the things that I've accomplished no matter how hard the times were in my life, and how I continue to grow. And also, what am I teaching my kids? Grit, resilience, never give up on yourself, and continue to push no matter how hard life pushes back at you or how hard life gets.
He hired people better than himself to run the company for him. And I think that's one of the interesting shifts that I've seen. We're at a point even in the insurance industry right now with all the artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff that's out there. You know, you can either learn it and adapt, or you're going to probably end up extinct. And if you're not extinct, you're certainly not going to be optimized at the level you could.
It's always the kids who had to fight to get more, not the kids who were given everything, that are going to win in this generation.
No, I agree.
Every single time I met someone in person that has been a good relationship, face-to-face, belly-to-belly, those have been the most valuable relationships I've ever had in my life and the most life-changing. You don't have employees, you have a team. A team works together, employees come for a paycheck. When everyone knows that they have a certain position or a certain role that they need to fulfill, and that is just as important as the next guy, people are going to work a little bit different. That's what creates your culture. So most business owners don't have culture, they don't have core values, they don't have any of that stuff.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And one of the ways we do that is by networking with other professionals that are serving the industries that we do. And that is why I have today's guest with me, Mr. Dan Sachkowsky from the great state of New Jersey and Big D Coaching. But we are recording away from both of our homes. I'm down here in Davie, Florida, at my good friend Ciara's office. Dan was down doing a whirlwind tour of podcasts in Florida and reached out. We had somehow connected on Instagram, and I decided, why not? Why not make it happen? So we're just going to get real for about the next hour or so, or however long it takes, but nothing's off limits, as I've told him. So welcome to the show, man. Glad to have you.
Appreciate it, man.
So talk a little bit about, you know, where you're at right now and what you're doing, but I'm really interested in your backstory, because for me, none of us are where we're at because we just showed up here one day. There's a series of events that leads you to where you're at. And with any level of success in any industry, you also have to go through your fair share of pitfalls and trials to get there, because I think that's what hardens us and makes us more resilient to be successful. So talk a little bit about that and bring us up to speed.
So currently right now, I'm a business growth expert. I help people in service-based industries mainly, but any business go from being the bottleneck to the CEO. Most people who are in their businesses aren't really building their best business nor their best brand. And most businesses today aren't sellable because that owner is literally stuck inside there. So I've built and scaled companies over 30 million, sold 3 of them over the course of the last 26 years. And I've realized that I'm really good at building businesses. But outside of that, I'm also good at losing a ton of money. So I've lost a lot of money and I've made a lot of money. And it'll lead into my story of how we got here. So I'll take you way back. Super humble beginnings. Grew up literally in the hood in New Jersey. And, my family strive for, I guess, as much as they can give us as kids. And our parents, a lot of parents had limiting beliefs, They hit the ceiling for where they thought they were. They lived every day, more weak at the end of the money, and that's just kind of the way life went. At 14 years old, moved to the suburbs, and we lived in an apartment until I was 14, a 2-bedroom apartment, me, my brother, my mom, my dad, on a 3rd floor of a home. So I think it was an illegal apartment. I'm not really sure. Yeah. And then 14, we moved to the suburbs, and we moved into a 3-bedroom house, but my grandma, grandpa, and uncle moved in. So it made the living situation the same. But my parents wanted what was best, and they had to do whatever they could do to afford it, and that was the move that we made. But when I moved to the suburbs, I saw life a little bit differently. When you're in a city area, when you're in the hood, when you're in an area where you can't really play outside and do things because you got to worry about what's going on. Now you're in an area where you can go outside, you could walk blocks, you could stay out late, and you start meeting people who are living this lifestyle that you were never introduced to. Some of my friends had baseball, pitching and batting cages in their backyard, pools, basketball courts. I started seeing all this stuff that I never saw possible.
It's funny you even bring up the batting cages, man, because that was something I was talking about yesterday or the day before with somebody in my neighborhood. We had a neighbor that moved away that had a batting cage in the yard, and some of the neighbors in the neighborhood were pissed off that they had it because they didn't think it looked great. And I'm thinking, when I was a kid, that was like a dream. Like the kids who had a batting cage in their yard, that's who you wanted to be friends with.
That's where everyone always was.
Yeah.
So I started seeing stuff like that. It started elevating my thinking, because when you're stuck in this one place and you can't really see outside of that box, you really think that this is it. And we passed Bon Jovi's house when I was 15 years old. And I remember this. I talk about this all the time. And when we passed this house, I said to my dad, I was like, what is this? I didn't know houses could be that big. And he said to me, those are rich people. We'll never be rich. And so from that day moving forward, a light switch just went off. And I'm like, whatever rich is, I want to be rich. So I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh, yeah. Robert Kiyosaki.
I remembered after I read that book that, all right, now I'm in line and I got my poor dad. And, I don't say that. People don't understand. If you've never read the book, you don't understand. Like, you don't disrespect your dad, but it's just a mentality of your parents. We love our parents, but we don't have to love the way they think.
Well, and I mean, especially if you grew up where you grew up. I was in the Midwest, not overly far away from where you were in Jersey, but my dad grew up in the steel mills, man. Like, blue collar. And to your point, there's never been a time in my life that I feel like we went without anything. And if we did, we didn't see it. And it was probably my parents that went without it to make sure they were providing for us. But to your point, what's the point if we can't evolve? If we can't become the next version of our parents? And I honestly think that, I can see this with having my own kids. If I'm not striving for them to be better than I am, then what am I really doing to raise them and push them to be the best version of themselves they can? So very, very similar parallels in terms of our background where we grew up, for sure.
Yeah. So I saw Bon Jovi's house. I see this whole thing. I read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I realized I got the poor dad. How do I find the rich dad? I ended up, my only job I ever had, this guy, Dave, he still to this day doesn't ever really understand how much he mentored me. He brushes it off, because sometimes people aren't willing to accept what they've done for other people. And I've tried to have conversations with him, but I met Dave. It was the only job I ever had. And I used to go to Dave's house on the weekends and sweep his garage floor, sweep his basement floor, clean his leaves, whatever I could do, because I wanted to live like Dave. Big house, 3 kids, all kids had their own swing sets named. It was incredible. And how do I live like Dave? So at 17 years old, I left high school, and I told Dave I was going to go out on my own and start my own business. And he goes, if anyone's ever going to do it, it's going to be you, and I believe in you. He goes, I think you're doing it a little bit quick, but I do believe in you if anyone's going to do it. So that's the first time anyone's ever said he believed in me. So now I had my rich dad, but at that point I had read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, because I'm just trying to level up. So now I see Bon Jovi's house. I figure rich, house, cars, white MTV cribs. That's what I grew up with. That's what wealth was based on, what you had.
And it's even more accelerated now that you have that instant gratification lifestyle from Instagram and TikTok. I mean, we saw it if you had cable and you could see it, like you said, on MTV Cribs or Pimp My Ride or whatever it was you were watching. But now everything's right in front of you all of the time. And I mean, I've even seen it to the point, we could probably debate the merit of being able to have access to seeing how other people live. But I've actually had friends whose marriages have dissolved because the wife would come in and say, I really want the Instagram lifestyle, and you're not able to provide that for me. And I'm like, what's that even mean?
So yeah, that my life actually fast forwarded that when Facebook became popular. And so I chased money. So at 17, started my own company. And from 17 to 24, I chased money. I wanted the house. I had the house. I wanted the cars. I had the cars. I had everything. I made $3.8 million by the time I was 24. That was 2026. Sorry, 2006. 2007, the economy crashed. I lost everything at 24.
At least you were 24, man.
Yeah, I had 2 kids, 24, filed for bankruptcy. And one thing I did learn was this. My ex-wife at the time loved the Facebook lifestyle because we didn't have Instagram back then. And everyone saw this whole image of who we were.
It's a perfect image of everybody.
Later on in life, it led us to getting divorced. And when we got divorced, people were like, oh, my God, I thought you guys were the perfect couple, because that's what we portrayed on the internet. So my story continues to the point I am today, is that after making all that money and then losing it all, one thing I did know was I knew how to do it. I just didn't know how to do it right. So people always ask me, like, what do you regret from back in that time? And I said, my biggest regret wasn't going bankrupt. It was not asking for help. So I left Dave. I basically cut the leash, went out on my own, and I figured, I could figure this out. So at that point, I hired my first coach at 25. And by having a business coach, that point moving forward, I went on to build 3 companies over the next 20 years to scale over 30 million. Sold all 3 companies. Throughout that process, another company went out of business. Another company went out of business. I had a heart attack. I got divorced. My one son didn't talk to me for 4 years, so I went through all of this stuff in my life, and I just continued to build and build and build through all that. So when I look at success, most people measure success off of stuff and money. I look at success as the things that I've accomplished, no matter how hard the times were in my life, and how I continue to grow. And also, what am I teaching my kids? Grit, resilience, never give up on yourself, and continue to push no matter how hard life pushes back at you or how hard life gets.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's the most important, is we have such a weird definition or thought process around what success really is. For me, success is the fact that I could get up and be 3.5 hours from my house this morning, hanging out on a road trip with my oldest son, having meaningful conversation the whole way here and back, and not having to worry about, is my business going to be okay when I get back? Is everything going to be all right at the house when I get back? All of that stuff. And it's the vacations we take, the time that we invest in family. And, I think that there's a big, I got into the insurance industry. The guy that was my mentor that convinced me this was the path that my life needed to take was an interesting guy. He was already a multimillionaire many times over, had no reason to necessarily get back into the industry, but he did. And I think part of it was because he had inherited his first agency from his dad, and he wanted to prove he could do it himself. And man, has he done that. But I'll never forget, when I started the agency that I have now, I was about 2 years in, and I asked him if he would mind having lunch with me. And we went and we sat and chatted for a little bit. And I'll never forget, he looked right across the table at me and he said, "Are you growing a lifestyle agency or are you growing a growth enterprise?" And I said, "I got 4 kids at home, man. I've got a lifestyle agency that's convertible to a growth enterprise when I'm ready to take time away from investing in them at the age they're in now and put it back into business." And you know what? I would argue we've got a growth enterprise that's just extremely flexible and gives me the ability to have the time and means to do really cool things with my kids. And I think, us growing up the way that we did, where our parents were extremely conservative. I know yours had to be,
yes,
mine were just very conservative. If we got McDonald's, it was a treat. Yeah. Like, it was a massive treat. And, we were limited on even then what we could get, what we could order when we went. And, all I've ever wanted to do is give my kids anything and everything that they want. But I've also realized that what they really want is they want my time, they want my attention, and they want me to invest in turning them into what they ultimately want to be.
That's powerful. Hence, one of the reasons why I coach now is because business owner burnout, right? So business owners think the harder they work, the more money they make, the better they become. But then you come home to the reason why you're building it, which is your family, your kids, whatever, and they get what you have left, which is nothing. It's exhaustion. Don't talk to me. I have to check my emails. I want to take a shower. I just want to lay down. And this is the kind of stuff they get. So you're in a position today where most business owners aren't. Like, they don't have the flexibility to have 3 hours versus 3 hours and be able to have an operating machine which is converting to wealth and converting to results without them being plugged into it 24/7. And most business owners are stuck in that position.
Well, they lack two things, in my opinion. They lack systems that are proven, replicable, and can easily be deployed, and they lack faith in those systems. Because we're taught work really hard and you can accomplish whatever you want as long as you're willing to put in the work. But you've learned this. You can't scale businesses at the rate you have without understanding you have to systematize what you're doing, number one.
All day,
And number two, you have to believe in that process. And I coach. I have a coaching community. It's well known on the podcast. But I work with people, and it's really, I feel more like a psychologist for about the first 3 to 6 months than an actual coach, because I've got to get them to quit living in their own head. That's the number one thing. Then the next thing is I need to get them to trust me. And they pay me a lot of money, man. I mean, I'm a high ticket coach, and I don't hide behind that. It is what it is. People get value out of it. They validate that expense because their business grows, but they got to trust me. You're paying me a lot of money for you not to listen to what I'm telling you. And most of the time, what I find is people want everything right now. They don't want to follow the system. And even if they do, the system doesn't necessarily move at the velocity that they want it to, but you can't build a foundation and rush doing that, right? And so they think, oh, I'll work harder and work harder and work harder. That puts you further behind. Yeah. You have to really just say, I'm going all in. And I'm interested because you're talking more about actual business owners that everything depends on it. I'm talking about growing top line revenue. I'm not even having to work with these people on profitability or anything else because I'm working with salespeople and coaching them in sales process. Dealing with total P&L responsibility and all that comes with it's a completely different animal, but I still believe the fundamentals are the same. You have to have systems in place and you have to execute.
Yeah. Most business owners today, like you said, they don't understand the processes of it. Everyone wants to do things the way they used to do. Technology is literally so far ahead of the game. Even with AI, like you can use AI to simplify so many things in your business. It could be your MVP, your most valuable partner, if you allow it to. And every single person in your company can be utilizing AI to take their workload from an 8-hour day to a 2-hour day and to become more productive. But people don't want to do it. People are scared of change, number one. And number two, people are scared to let go of control. So what I've seen is that, once you hit that portion of burnout, so that's like where I had my heart attack, right? So even though I was making a ton of money, even though my companies were all running, even though I had systems and processes in place, it's like I still had like this overbearing thing on my back, which was like taking over me every single day, all the stress, everything, and it calculates to a point where the calculator just blows up. And I just knew like, hey, I have so much responsibility on me that I can't be doing this all the time. So I converted the next 3 years to show how the processes and systems can literally work the entire company. And I worked less than 20 hours a week. And I literally generated 3 times more revenue.
Yeah, it's interesting. The control piece is, I think, human nature to some degree. Some of the best advice I ever got, or I don't even know if it would be advice as much as it was just comment, but I told you before we started recording that I spent a long time in retail. And the best compliment I could have gotten is when my district manager would come in and say, David, I came in yesterday on your off day. Your store ran better when you're not here than when you are. And that's when I really realized that if you're going to lead an organization, it's a completely different thing than managing an organization. You have to lead out in front. You have to, it's just a completely different skill set. And I think a lot of times, and I'm interested in your thoughts specifically when it comes to the service-based businesses, because in my experience, and I work with a ton of these people, most of them didn't necessarily think they were going to be a business owner, right? Most of them were a really good plumber that maybe got to be a foreman for somebody, but decided, if they're like I am, I could do this better, my way. I'm going to go do my own thing. And then they do, and guess what? They're probably a really good plumber, but they don't know a thing about scaling a business, hiring people, firing people, making sure that they're trained, making sure that you have, that your customers are happy and all of that stuff. And we're at a point right now where if you are a really good operator, venture capital is crushing the service industry. Like I've seen it over and over and over again. These guys are building and ladies are building companies of up to 25 to 50 million, and they're just getting gobbled up left and right now because there's so few of them that, number one, get to that size. And the reason they get there is because they figured out how to become operators. They took the time to hire business coaches, go to masterminds, invest in themselves, and make sure that they're doing the things that actual business owners do. And, I hate to say it, but sometimes it's as simple as look at what other business owners are doing and make sure you're in the same room. If you can start with that, then you'll figure the rest of it out. But too many people are so worried about continuing to turn the wrench that they don't look at their business from that bird's eye view, and it's never going to get to its full potential.
That's exactly right. Most all businesses, whether it's a construction company, a barber shop, someone who owns an insurance firm, even times that worked for an insurance company, now they want to have their own company. That happens a lot. Whether it's a financial firm. I've got a guy who owns a couple gyms. He was like big in the fitness industry, and he used to always work in the gyms to get paid minimum. Now he owns his own gym. So your thought process has to shift.
Yep.
And most people don't realize the business owner thought process is a totally different vehicle than the way you've been conditioned up into that point. So now, instead of going to the operator, now they're the overstressed, overworked employee that says, okay, now I got it. They don't realize how much pressure they're putting on themselves. So you're talking about venture capitalists and all these people who want to come in and buy companies, but they're going to eat up your small company. Like if your company's doing good and you're the one coming in, they're going to eat up your company. They're going to borrow you for a little bit. They're going to take your company, turn it around, throw you out the door, and that's just because you set yourself up for failure because of everything you're doing. So I actually prepare all the people that I work with, like how do we take you outside of your business so that you are your brand now? If your company were to sell, you don't have to go with it because the systems and processes detach from you. They go with you. Now you can get big money for your company. So my first question is, if you ever wanted to sell your company, what do you think it's worth? And most people said, I have no idea. Now I start digging into, well, how much time do you put in it? What are your responsibilities? All this kind of stuff. And then when I come down to it, I go, your business is worth zero because you are your business. And nobody's going to buy a business that you're doing all the operations. Well, what do you mean? Nobody could do it better than me. What do most business owners say? If I could just find one more of me. That's the most selfish thing any of us can say, and I'm going to tell you why. Most of us as business owners really suck at what we do, but we think we're really good at it.
Yeah.
There's 5 people and 5 roles that have to be filled, and there's no possible way either one of us can fill all 5 of those roles and be absolutely great at them.
No, I agree. It's interesting, too, because I think one of my strengths over the course of my time in retail specifically was training and development of people. And, there are things that I know that I'm not good at. I feel like I'm a pretty self-aware individual at this point. You get your ass kicked enough times in life, you're going to figure out what self-awareness really is. But I never really worried about trying to replicate myself. I tried to worry about who do I have. I look at business most of the time, especially in that environment. I would go to a new store. You're playing 5-card stud. You got to play the hand you're dealt. So how do I take what I've got and develop it to maximize its full potential as much as I can? And to your point, going out and saying, find one more of me. Well, why? Why not just develop what you've already got? You've probably got what you need sitting right in front of you.
Yep. So most people hire such good talent, but they never use the talent.
Yep.
And they just want people to fill the seat. And how can I fill that seat at the least expense to my company? That way they can operate at their level, and that's all I expect.
And they're insecure. They don't want somebody who's maybe got more talent than the business owner that's going to come in, and they're for whatever reason they're worried they're going to try and take over or take their place. That's exactly right. Such a shallow mindset. I mean, it really is.
When people start releasing that, what I've seen is it's almost like they didn't even know they had their weight on their back, and they were carrying all that. And they're like, wow, like I had no idea. And now they start to get a taste of freedom. And once they get that taste of freedom, it's a whole different ballgame for them.
Yeah, and they like it.
They love it.
They want to double down on that because they haven't had it. That's when I think all of us get to a point where we have that sort of moment where it's like, wow, like I actually took the day off and did what I wanted to do, and I came back in and everything's fine today. I can actually do this. And And I think you have to go through that. But one of my clients is a guy that I've known since junior high, and I was out at his shop yesterday to meet to talk about some things regarding some technology we're putting into his company. And I was meeting with his chief operating officer, and I said, "What time's Matt come in?" And she said, sometimes 10:30, sometimes 11, whatever else. I'm like, good for him, man. Good for him. Number one, that he's able to do that because he has her and has empowered her to do what he hired her to do, and he stays out of her way. But the other thing is that he's not stressed out, worried about running this business, and he runs a really good, just right down the middle manufacturing company, $10-12 million a year in sales.
That's great.
And, he's got a place over at the beach. He's got his regular house. He's had his first grandchild now. And he's in a position where he made all the deposits, man. Now it's time to start cashing the checks. He put the time in. He put the effort in. He invested in himself. He invested in equipment and systems. And, everything is state-of-the-art at this point. And so it looks like you got a guy that comes into work from 11 to 3 every day, who a lot of people would probably think, if they're old school, oh, he's an absentee owner, no way his company's doing that well. When the reality is he hired people better than himself to run the company for him. And I think that's one of the interesting shifts that I've seen, because I pay really close attention to the generation that my kids are in. As best I can, I try to stay, and they do a really good job, except for the fact that there's Snapchat, and I can't figure that out yet. But they do a pretty good job of making it easy to track where their thought processes are, what the trends are, and all of that stuff. And one of the things that I would say that I think the average person of my age, and I've got you by 10 years. I'm 52, so
come on, be generous. 8.
Okay. I look at it, and they're not greedy people. And what I mean by that is I've seen these, and I say kids, but my son's 23 now. I see these guys and ladies that are his generation, and they may have their hands in 2 or 3 different things, 4 or 5, 6 things in some cases, and they're not pulling 100% out of each one. Yeah. They're taking they get a 30-40% cut. They're investing in a good team to run that business, and then they'll go start another business and get 30 or 40% another one. And so a lot of this passive income, it starts stacking up and stacking up. And to me, that's just a really interesting concept, because I grew up, you griped about the first 40 and you sung like a bird for everything over 40, because that time and a half kicked in. You wanted as much of it as you could get, and you worked hard for everything you needed. And I'm not saying that this generation's not working hard. They're just working in a different way with a different viewpoint. And they understand that if I just broaden, I'm looking at it even from a risk management perspective. Let's say one of the businesses tanks. They don't lose everything at that point. It's a completely different thing. And we can learn from the people that are younger than us too, I guess is sort of the moral of the story.
Yeah, it's a different work ethic. They don't have the hard work as far as the grind. But they'll use their brain. They'll out-rap our brain. You know what I mean? But they're not going to jump in the trenches like we did. But they're going to do some stuff differently like that. But yeah, I mean, it all depends too. I think when you look at the younger generation. So we have people who are your age, my age, that are still entitled, and they still aren't doing shit with their life, and they're complaining and blaming everyone. And then you got the same thing with the younger generation, where they were coddled, and everything they did, it was a trophy, so.
Right.
It really all depends on how you look at it and how it comes out. And I would say it's always the kids who had to fight to get more, not the kids who were given everything, that are going to win in this generation.
No, I agree. It's funny. I played baseball my entire life through college. And so I have a lot of baseball conversations. But we were talking this week about these kids that play travel ball, and they show up looking like they're going to the Major League All-Star game, dressed to the nines. They've got every accessory known to man. And I can remember my coach, my favorite and most impactful, both in life and from a coaching standpoint, but my favorite coach of my entire life was when the years that I was 14 and 15. We had one bat bag. The entire team had
the whole big bag.
Yeah, we had one bag, It had, 3 helmets in it. So if the bases were loaded, somebody was screwed. There wasn't going to be a helmet. And, there was 1 set of catcher's gear. There were like maybe 3 bats. Nobody wore batting gloves. We rubbed dirt on our hands and grabbed the bat. And this guy, like even the coach, man, it was so just perfectly profiling the era that I grew up in and how much our parents were lucky that we survived in some cases. This dude had an old Volkswagen Carmen Ghia that the floorboard was rusted out of. And if he took you home from practice, he had the bat bag like sitting on the frame of the car, and you sat on the bat bag as your chair to get to the house. And I'm thinking, man, if I had anybody show up with my kids like that today, I would lose my mind. But it's a whole different world, and I think that's the part that's cool. People like us that start in the humble beginnings. Like I said, you were in Jersey, I was in the Midwest, but definitely my dad worked for somebody else his entire life, and he's back to doing that right now. And I don't knock him for any of it. I mean, I think when you have kids of your own, you put yourself into your parents' shoes to some degree, and you appreciate a lot of stuff that you didn't appreciate at that point. But, when I put myself in my dad's shoes, he was doing everything he could to provide for his family. I will never knock or take anything away from that. It's just a different thought process for me. I've always said, once I started signing the front of my paycheck instead of the back, I'll never sign the back of another paycheck again. I want to own the place that I work. I want to be in control. But I'm also open-minded enough to know that when you're scrappy and you have to beg, borrow, and steal for everything you get in life, you learn from 360 degrees. It's not just the people who came before you. It's the people to your left and right, and it's the generation behind you. And I mean, we're at a point even in the insurance industry right now with all the artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff that's out there. You can either learn it and adapt, or you're going to probably end up extinct. And if you're not extinct, you're certainly not going to be optimized at the level you could. But we're at a point now where, I honestly believe, and people would have thought I was nuts saying this 5 years ago, I think you could be a single licensed agency owner with a very limited amount of actual human help, and you could scale your business to $10 million in revenue with pretty much no problem at all, using the tools that are out there just at a very basic level.
There's so much out there to help us today, and so many things that are put in place to get us to the places where we need to go, but they're so underutilized.
Yep.
And something that you said before, which was super powerful, was you talked about your coach, you talked about 3 helmets, and here's what I was thinking. I remember the bag with 3 or 4 helmets in it, and I remember that no helmet ever fit some of the kids, but you had to figure it out.
Yeah.
Now today it's like, this entitlement thing where like, oh, this helmet doesn't fit. Oh, my helmet has a little scratch on it. Oh, like we had to figure it out.
Mom, why didn't you polish my helmet last night before the game?
We didn't have options.
Right.
We had to figure things out.
And they didn't smell good, man.
No,
let's just call it what it is. You get to the 4th inning, you're wearing a sweaty helmet that everybody else has had on their head.
The catcher's gear smelled like foul.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it made the bag terrible. The coach would actually air it out sometimes. But here's what I do remember was that figuring out, we never complained about it. In this world that we're in today, we have so many resources. We have so many things in place for us, but people still find the way to complain about how there's not enough, how there's nothing there. Just take yourself back 40 years and look at the things that you had to go through.
Yeah, and I think part of it, too, for us, man, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. But again, I'm a little bit ahead of you, but not far enough there should be a massive difference. When I went to college, the internet really wasn't mainstream. Like, I got to college, we got an email address, but you maybe would check it once a week. Maybe there would be something in there.
AOL.com.
Yeah, AOL
and
Prodigy and Netscape, and all of them were sending CD-ROMs out in the mail to everybody. But you weren't doing business, right? You weren't conducting any kind of commerce or whatever. It was more just like people going on message boards or whatever else. And so we had the benefit of watching the internet develop. We've seen, and part of it, I was fortunate enough that my grandmother on my dad's side lived well into her 90s. And up until, probably the last year, just sharp as a tack, good physical condition, and all of that. Some of my favorite memories are just being able to sit, having a cup of coffee and listening to her talk about all of the things she saw change from the Great Depression to where we're at now. I think about all the stuff that's changed in the last 25 years, from 2000 to 2025. And it's like, with the amount of acceleration that change has had over just the last 2.5 decades, what the heck does 25 years from now look like? We grew up as kids thinking, oh, well, the Jetsons is going to be a real thing. We'll be flying around in cars and all of that. And it didn't really happen. And then last week I'm watching on the news, there's a single person little hover thing that's getting ready to go out and be available to the public to fly around in now.
So, we grew up in the Flintstone age, right? Remember the TV with the antenna? We had to move the antenna for it to go. We had 3 channels. Now these kids are like,
or use aluminum
shit,
foil.
I don't have my Netflix. Like, oh, my God, I might have a heart attack. Like, dude, we had to make so many things work. And a lot of times we couldn't even watch TV.
Everybody was an Atlanta Braves fan because they were on, if you were fortunate enough to have cable, that's the only team that was ever on TV playing baseball. So everybody all over the country knew all the Braves players. It's completely crazy. And then you think about going from VCR to Laserdisc to DVDs to Blu-ray to the fact we don't even have any of that crap anymore. You stream it all now.
Yeah. It's funny. I was with my boys the other day, and I'm like, man, it's really brisk out here. And they're like, they start laughing at me. They're like, what? And they're like, it's brick outside. I'm like, that's what they say cold is brick outside.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. But to them, saying it's brisk outside, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
They're making up their own terminology, their own words. Like, it makes, and their initials and all the dumb shit they come up with. And we're like, and they're telling us we don't understand.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It is. And I'm conscious about not turning into the people that are in the Dr. Rick progressive commercials where you're becoming your parents. Like, I'm at that really slippery slope now where I'll hear myself say something like, oh, God, I sound like my dad, or whatever. But anyhow, so listen, you've had your fair share of success. You've had some turbulence along the way. You're doing the coaching thing now. I think for me specifically, I enjoy doing that. I enjoy doing my insurance work just because I do have diagnosed ADHD. I don't take medication for it. So for me, seeing different things all day keeps me stimulated, and I'm really good in short bursts in that. And coaching's kind of the same way for me, because I'm talking to 10 people a day, and every conversation is about something completely different. So I never have to worry about losing my focus or, what value I can bring to a conversation. But I'm interested in, what made you decide this is the route you want to go, and what are you doing? Because I know that we talked about before we started recording that you're actually going to start taking this thing and not just have it be virtual, but do some in-person events and maybe even have masterminds in certain locations. So talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So what took me to where I was my heart attack. And I believe I was given a second chance. When that heart attack happened, all I can remember is very briefly in the ambulance ride and in the hospital, a lot of things go through your head. It's all blur, blur, blur. But I said, like, what did I really do to impact this world on my short time here? Like, this is it. Yeah, I've made money. I've built businesses. I've done things. But what are my grandkids going to talk about? So after sitting in the hospital for 3 days and, having a lot of conversations with God and different things going on, I'm like, listen, I know right now that, I'm good at doing what I'm doing, but I'm not helping anybody through the process. So I'm going to go out there and I'm going to figure out what I need to do to bring this to market, how I'm going to show people to live their best life, take people into that CEO role, because I know, and I've been beneficial there, and I know the difference of life you can have there, and show people what it is to really live the life that you once desired. Because people get so stuck and they just kind of give up on, like, oh, I'm going to own a business, right? When someone owns a business, they see nice house, nice cars, they see all this stuff. And what do they think about? Like, oh, I'm going to own a business because I want that stuff. And then what happens? 5 years later, they own a business. They're in the ruts. Like, this sucks. Why? Because they didn't go into the real operator mode of owning a business. They just looked at the cash flow, and they think the harder I work, the more I do. So I said, I'm going to help people. So I knew that one thing that has happened to me over the last 20 plus years was every single time I met someone in person that has been a good relationship, face to face, belly to belly, those have been the most valuable relationships I've ever had in my life and the most life changing. You can't do things on Zoom. You can't do things, through a book. You can't do things like that. So how do I take what I've done and impact the marketplace with it? Well, I'm going to sell all my companies. I'm going to coach low to mid-level entrepreneurs that are, I believe, wantrepreneurs. Like, people call themselves entrepreneurs. It's a very abused word. You're an entrepreneur. You're here today. You took to travel. You have money working for you. Most people who think, because I have a rental property and I own a business, I'm an entrepreneur.
They think you can name it and claim it. You either are or you aren't.
100%.
Just because you say it doesn't mean it's true.
But it's like the school teacher who has a real estate license.
Right.
I'm an entrepreneur. How many houses do you sell? Well, no, you can't just label yourself because you have things to put on your badge. So I just told myself I was going to help people. I was going to do it by bringing back live events. I started in New Jersey. Now I'm here in Florida. I'm doing live events. We're putting people together. And I decided to call it the 7-figure blueprint because most business owners stay stuck at 6 figures. I'm making $100,000 a year. I'm making just under $1 million a year, but that's what you're grossing. What are you really making? And what I found out with almost everyone I work with is if I divide up the time they put into their business by the money that they net, most average business owner today is making between $20 and $30 an hour. Go get a job.
Yes, I agree.
You have nothing to worry about, no responsibility, no stress. How do I take you to operate at a 3 times level where you're making 6 times as much and you're working a lot less? So that's exactly what I'm doing with the 7-figure blueprint syndicate. So I host live events. We lay out a roadmap, systems, processes, systems, how you do it, how you funnel up to become that authority, become that celebrity in your space, and not just stay as somebody who's kind of known. And then hosting the masterminds, it's all about transformation. It's not about hype. It's not about anything other than taking something that's a problem and creating a process to make it something that's going to grow through your business and being solution driven, because most business owners don't know how to find solutions. They just look at the problem and they create a bigger problem around it because they try to throw stuff at it to make it work. So I have a mastermind, an all-year mastermind in New Jersey, an all-year mastermind in Florida. I bring business owners together and I really drive results, transformation. That's the whole goal. And I guarantee a 3X growth within 12 months as long as they do everything that we teach. And all of the principles that we teach are based on the principles that I know and principles that I've learned through my coaches over the years.
So let me ask you this, because I know just in my experience, if I go into any company, I'll use service contractors because I know you deal a lot in the service industry. I'm going to see a lot of common themes. I can almost tell you based on the revenue that your business is doing every year, where you're stuck and where your bottlenecks are. And you might not even see those things. What do you see as common mistakes when you engage with somebody in coaching that you've seen time and time and time again? Because I feel like it's a lot of the same repeat offenders over and over.
Yeah, so what I see a lot of times is accountability. Most people don't take accountability. They want to blame their team for the results they're not getting. Number 2, there's no culture. There's no company culture. When you hire people to be on your team, so let's take it back a step. You don't have employees, you have a team. A team works together, employees come for a paycheck. When everyone knows that they have a certain position or a certain role that they need to fulfill and that is just as important as the next guy, people are going to work a little bit different. That's what creates your culture. So most business owners don't have culture. They don't have core values. They don't have any of that stuff. They're just like, oh, we need another person here. Shoot out something on Indeed. Let's pull some resumes. Now, how do you qualify that resume? How do you qualify that person to be the best person in that seat? Well, the first thing you're doing is you're asking that person how much they want to make. What does that matter? See what that person knows. See what that person can bring to the table. See what that person's worth. Because so many people out there are worth more than they actually think, and they're willing to bring it all to your business as long as you're willing to treat them like a part of the team. So that's the biggest thing. Culture, team, get rid of the boss mentality and employee mentality. Become a leader who leads a team and guides a team to take you guys all to an elevated place and create something worth showing up to work for. And most people don't have that in business.
Well, and the reality is if you do those things, you're not going to Indeed to find people. People are coming to you 100%. Because you have something contagious they want to be a part of.
And people are actually like, oh my God, I work for this guy, or girl, whoever it is. And like, they're excited. And now people want to meet those people. So it's the same thing. But what I'm saying is, prior to me coming in to fix this, that's what they're doing. They're jumping on Indeed and looking for the low-hanging fruit that can fill the seat just to fill the seat.
Yeah, you're running on a treadmill.
So that's the first problem I see. Second problem I see is most business owners don't know where their expenses go. So they have a profit and loss that they give their accountant at the end of the year, but they're not tracking anything. No CRMs, so they don't know their cost per profit on jobs, cost per cost on jobs. There's no processes in place. It's the same way they've been doing it for the last 20 years, wondering how their competition is outworking them.
Or their customer acquisition cost, from a marketing perspective. How much is it really costing me to get this opportunity to begin with? I agree with you completely.
So people are like, and here's the first thing I say, I need to rebuild my website. Your website's irrelevant. It's all about your presence on the marketplace. It's all about what you're doing. It's all about how showing yourself. So what I did was I proved to myself in the last 2 companies I had that branding was the most important part of my company. As long as people knew the brand, saw the brand, trusted the brand would always sell itself. And that's what I did. I took the last company I built, I literally SEO for 1 year. That's it. After that, top page of Google, first ranked page, first ranked company. There's a performance thing on the internet where you can go and see how your website performs. I was a 9 out of 10. I didn't pay for SEO for 9 years, only the first year. But it's all about how you perform it, how you got it, how you trace it, and how you protect it in the marketplace. And it's also your brand and how you do it. So what's your relevance to the market? People want to call companies their name. That means nothing. People want to, make their company their identity. That means nothing. And people don't want to put videos up. Social media is your social proof, right? So people don't want to get behind the camera and be on what you're talking about, service-based company, on a job site, talking on a camera like, hey, blah, 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 here's where I am. This is what I'm doing. They don't want to show that stuff because you're too scared. That's why your competition's beating you, because they're showing the before, the after, they're showing the result, they're showing you live in person. It's no more where people want to go on your website and see a gallery of pictures. People like action. And when people take action, other people's connect.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny, man, because I actually said, we talked about this a little bit, but I put it out on LinkedIn last week. 2026 is my year to show everybody. I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of theory and concept and giving people a framework. Now I'm going to take that exact same thing post-COVID because, on the agency side of my business, it was a completely different scenario for the couple of years during COVID, right? And so now I'm going to be able to be back out meeting with people. We're getting back to more the way things used to be, kind of hybrid in that Zoom has become more acceptable to some people, but a lot of people still want to meet in person at this point. And when you're dealing with companies that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in insurance, I don't have a problem putting on a suit and going and talking to them, right? If that's what they want, that's where I'm going to meet them. But it as a coach, it now gives me an even different level of what I can share. And and one of the things that makes me unique in my industry is most of the guys, and this is not a knock on you by any stretch, but most of the guys and ladies that you see coaching were agents. Nobody really, there's no real qualification for what you have to do to be a coach. Nobody says, hey, show me your production reports for the last 10 years you were a producer so we know all this BS you're spinning actually works or whatever else. I'm still in the game, man. I'm still actually doing it. I own an agency. I am a producer. And so taking the ability to generate content from the fact that I'm actually out doing it. So instead of telling people, I'm showing you how it's done and what I do every day. And this is why my business has been able to scale. It just takes my coaching to a completely different level.
So when you look at what you're doing, I think it's important for someone who owns, an agency and being a coach like you, the similarities there were like, hey, listen, I could step away. I could train you. My business runs with or without me. And at the end of the day, that's a book of business. Totally different than when you look at the construction side, why it's good for me is because I got the receipts. Hey, listen, I built a business. I sold the business. Now I give you all my attention. I own the shovel, use the shovel, sold the shovel. So two different worlds. So when I work with guys like you, I have different brokers that I work with, whether it's insurance, real estate broker companies, whether it's people who do like life insurance and all that stuff. I don't know if you do that as well. And then I look at them like, hey, how do we make your company the best so that you become the person of your company? And one day you're going to want to walk away from this, but your company still holds the same value. That might not be today, but you can go out there and train all these people who come into your company because they're going to want the lifestyle you have, but you're still present and showing them. So what you do is amazing because that's what you need to do in your industry.
Well, it's funny because, even it's what I need to do in my industry, but also specifically my agency. And, people will throw shade, like how can you run a successful agency and have all the time that you invest in other people helping to coach them? And I'd say, well, it's real simple. I built the systems for my agency. I'm just simply monetizing them by selling them to a third party now. Yeah. Everything that we do, whether it be learning management system or coaching calls or things like that, those are all things I have to do in my agency anyhow. So as I was going through and building that stuff out, as I was scaling my agency, I realized, you know what, there's probably a market for this for other people. That's where the entrepreneurial piece comes in, man. I mean, I look at it now, and if you look at the portfolio of companies that I own or have ownership in, every ounce of it's vertically integrated. It all started with my agency, but it's built on top of that now so that everything I do is tied to the industry, to the same general mission, and I could continue to plug things in and I'm not losing any capacity because we're leveraging technology. Anybody listening to this podcast knows, going back to the very first episodes, I'm one of the main people leading the charge for why we need CRMs, not just an agency management system, but an actual CRM. And people thought I was nuts because over the last 6-7 years, I've spent over $500,000 building out HubSpot into a custom version of HubSpot for my agency. I don't ever have to ask anybody for data points. I don't ever have to, so much is automated, so much is reported. And I learned the best thing that I got probably from being in retail was understanding how to make business decisions and run my business based off of real-time information. Yeah. Getting the sales reports, getting your profit reports, getting your weekly projected gross profits for your perishable departments and all of that stuff. And that has helped me more than anything else. And I think, that's the one thing, to your point, people don't know what their expenses are. Discretionary spending gets way out of hand really quick. I'm 100% guilty of it, man.
All of us are.
When I brought in my first bookkeeper, I'm like, all right, it's time for me to come clean. Didn't want to hire somebody because I'm a little free with the business debit card, if you catch my drift. And she's like, well, that's gonna stop. We're gonna have to figure it out. If you want to spend the money, that's fine, but you need to take it out of the business, spend the money to do what you want to do. But, it's always interesting. And I think the other thing is, too, just because you own a business doesn't mean you've made it.
100%.
It doesn't mean you've maximized your potential. It means you own a business.
So there's two sides to that, right? You have the business. You either think you own the business and you really do own the business, or you own the business and the business owns you. 95% of people, the business owns them.
Yep.
Because everything is tied to it. And then something tragically happens in their life. Now the business is falling apart. They go on vacation. They got to answer the phone all the time. They're always doing stuff because that business is so reliant on them. And I think something about you, which is important, is like when you got involved in the insurance game, you had that conversation at the table, right across the table. The conversation was like, hey, here's what I want to do. Tell me everything. So, you started knowing that, hey, I want to expand this thing. I need a coach, someone to guide me. And now you can coach people being in that world. Most people want to coach people. Like, how many people do I talk to? I want to be a coach. Well, what value do you bring to the market? What can you really coach on?
First off, why?
Yeah.
Like, is it that
to make money?
Yeah,
that's what they think.
Perceive that this is like the most lucrative occupation? Can you make money coaching? You absolutely can. And I'm a big believer that you should invest in having good coaches. Yeah. If you can buy other people's experiences and things that you can avoid, it's always cheaper than you having to learn that lesson yourself. And
the same thing with your people who are on your team. How do you invest back in them? Because you could become the sharpest tool in the shed, But if your other tools aren't getting sharpened, we got a problem. So I'll give you an example. My media guy, like I said, how do I get the best media guy out there? Because at the end of the day, you want to find somebody who highly elevates wherever you are or someone in your business is. So I have a media guy who's very good at what he does, training my media guy, and at my cost, because I know that if I can make him the best, it's going to be pressure, it's going to be pain, it's going to be resilience, it's going to be resistance, all sorts of shit's going to happen throughout that process, but it's not me, it's somebody else. But as soon as he elevates and goes to this point where he's right here, man, we just raised the needle. We just raised the bar. Now we're at a place where, bro, we're doing things that like nobody's ever done before because I invest in my team. I invest in every single person who works with me. And I never say for me. Every single person who works with me, because it's a collaborated effort for whatever we're doing to become elevated, as long as we're all rising together. And that's a big problem in coaching.
Yeah, I agree. We've been going almost an hour, man. What have we left off the table you want to talk about?
I think we covered everything. I would just say, anyone who wants to connect, I'll definitely connect with them. I would love to, help any business owner out there in this South Florida area, really go out there and elevate. I'm looking to expand it in the Florida marketplace. I know, a lot of your people are in Florida, so we're going to start Florida in 2026, and then over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to have multiple distribution points where we can really train business owners to become their absolute best, give them all the solutions to their problems, and show them that their problems are just things that they're overlooking that we can change really, really quick and become result driven. So, I just want to drive it home that, you have coaches. I have a coach. I pay $100,000 a year for my coach. So at the end of the day, people are like, oh, why should I invest in you? Like, I overly invest in myself. And I was talking to my media guys yesterday, and they're like, how much money do you spend a year on yourself? I said, probably about $200,000. Mm-hmm. They're like, what? Because people can't fathom that.
Right.
And the amount of money that you invest in comes back. They say tenfold. I say 500-fold. And there's just so many different opportunities, plus the connections that you make and relationships that you build.
100%. That's awesome. How do they get a hold of you, man? I know it's Big D Official on Insta.
Yeah, Big Dan Official on Instagram. That's my largest platform. That's where I'll connect with you. You shoot me a DM, just like me and you. We went back and forth. You weren't talking to bots. I don't deal with any of that bullshit. A lot of coaches out there just have automated stuff. They want you to buy into programs, and not work with you. Anytime that you're talking to me, whether it's on Instagram, LinkedIn, or wherever it is, I'm just primarily an Instagram guy, but I do have all platforms. It's me talking to you. It's me guiding you. I give so much free value. Most of my coaching clients come 10, 15 days later after I've given them so much value for free.
You know what? They're not buying the value from you at that point. They're buying the accountability to make sure they execute on the value they already know you deliver.
100%. So Instagram is where you'll find me. Big D Coaching /1-on-1. That's for my one-on-one coaching. For Florida here, Big D Mastermind /Florida. There's only a few spots left. Once we fill it out, then we'll be open to open up another area. But check that out. And if you're anywhere else, just check out Big D Mastermind. We got a few of them everywhere else. And that's really it. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Absolutely, man. It's been awesome. I always like talking to people outside the norm, that we deal with every day. But also people who come from similar, not necessarily the same, but similar backgrounds, and just seeing how you have gotten to where you're at. I don't want to say what you've overcome or anything, because I don't feel like what we deal with in life is necessarily needs to be viewed as negative. I think every experience we have is something that if you have the right mindset, you're building on it as a stepping stone and not as something that holds you back. So it's been a great conversation. I would encourage anybody out there. I mean, listen, I know we've got insurance carriers, we've got wholesale partners, we have regional and national brokerages. Everybody out there has the ability to look at a training budget and where they're spending their time and money right now, and can probably find money and time both that needs to be invested in leveling up. If you're not sure if it's you, feel free to reach out and ask me. I can tell you every one of you that I have a problem with based on interacting with you, and then I'll usher you into talking with Dan. But I would encourage everybody to check it out. And if you're in South Florida and you miss out on being a part of his live events in his year-round mastermind, we're giving you a conduit. The only person that's keeping you from doing it is yourself. if you even thought once about it, don't take the time to think twice. You'll end up missing out. The greatest piece of advice that I could give anybody is exactly how I live every single day, and that is I will make decisions quick based on the information that I have. I will make mistakes, but will course correct, but will never miss a single opportunity that's in front of me because I will always capture more than I lose at. So with that being said, again, thanks to Dan. Look forward to hooking up with him more in the future, and we'll catch everybody else next week. See ya.